The first snow of the season had arrived silently in the night, draping the backyard in a quilt of untouched white. Every branch wore a delicate coat of frost, and the air carried that crisp metallic scent that only came with deep winter. From the kitchen window, Emily cradled her mug of coffee, watching as the pale morning light filtered through the pines beyond the fence. Their home sat on the edge of the forest, far enough from town that the only sounds were wind, the creak of settling wood, and sometimes the soft call of an owl. Life here was slow, deliberate. Emily, her husband Mark, and their 2 kids had grown used to the stillness. That stillness broke when she saw movement at the tree line. At first, she thought it was just a shadow, a trick of light playing over the snow. But then it shifted, heavy, deliberate steps crunching through the frost. A dark shape emerged between the trees. Broad shoulders. Thick fur flecked with white. A bear. It stopped just past the fence, standing half in shadow, its breath steaming in the cold air. It didn't move toward the house, didn't paw at the snow for food, it just watched. Emily's hand tightened around her mug. She called for Mark, and when he joined her at the window, his brow furrowed. "Strange," he murmured. "They don't usually come this close unless they're hungry." But there was no aggression in the bear's posture, no restless pacing. It stood still for a few more moments, head tilted ever so slightly, before retreating into the pines as silently as it had appeared. Emily's gaze lingered on the place where it had vanished, an odd unease curling in her stomach. She didn't know it yet, but this wouldn't be the last time they saw that bear. And each visit would bring it closer. The next morning, the snow was different. Not untouched, not pristine, marked. Emily stepped outside with her coat pulled tight, breath clouding in the sharp air. The early sun painted the drifts in shades of gold, and right there, just beyond the porch steps, she saw them, deep clean impressions pressed into the snow. Bear tracks. They were fresh, so fresh that she could still see the crisp edges where the snow had compacted, tiny crystals catching the light. The prints circled the porch, coming within just a few feet of the front door, before trailing back toward the treeline. Mark came out behind her, pulling on his gloves. He crouched down beside one of the prints, his voice low. This was last night, maybe even early this morning. Emily glanced toward the forest. The bear hadn't just wandered close, it had come right to their home. For the rest of the day, the thought stayed with her. While she made breakfast, while the kids played inside, she kept glancing out the windows. The forest felt closer now, somehow, like its quiet eyes were on them. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, she and Mark sat in the living room with the blinds cracked just enough to watch the yard. The sky was heavy with new clouds, promising more snow. Somewhere far off, a branch cracked, the sound too sharp to be wind. Emily felt it before she saw it, the shift in the shadows. Then, between the porch light's glow and the dark of the trees, the bear stepped into view. It didn't look hungry. It didn't look lost. It looked purposeful. Emily's chest tightened. The bear was visiting for a reason. And whatever it was, they were getting closer to finding out. By late afternoon, the snow had begun again, slow, drifting flakes that thickened the air and softened every edge. The kids were upstairs building pillow forts, the smell of soup simmering in the kitchen, when Emily caught movement through the front window. Her pulse jumped. There it was again, that heavy, deliberate shape emerging from between the pines. The bear moved slowly, not with the meandering steps of an animal foraging, but with a straight, steady path toward the house. Mark joined her at the window. "Same one," he murmured, eyes narrowing. The massive creature's fur was matted with snow, its breath visible in the frigid air. It stopped near the porch, standing just far enough away that the light barely touched its face. For a long moment, it didn't move. It only looked at them. Emily swore she saw something in its posture, not aggression, but expectation. The bear wasn't trying to break in, wasn't pawing at the ground for food. It was waiting. The kids clattered down the stairs, their laughter cutting through the tension, and the bear's head turned sharply toward the sound. Emily froze, but instead of approaching, the animal let out a deep, almost rumbling huff. Then it turned away, vanishing once more into the snow-flecked dark. That night, after the kids were asleep, Emily sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea gone cold. She could still see the way the bear had stood there, watching, as if it knew them. Mark checked the yard one last time before bed. When he came back inside, he looked pale. "There's something new out there," he said quietly. "And it's not just tracks this time." Emily's heart pounded. The bear was leaving them something. And that meant it would be back. Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that made it hard to tell where the snow ended and the sky began. Mark was already up, bundled in his thick coat, when Emily joined him at the porch. "Stay inside," he told her, but she followed anyway. The cold bit at their faces as they stepped down into the yard. The snow was unbroken except for one long trail of prints, heavy, deep, and straight. They led from the tree line to a spot barely 15 feet from the porch. That's where they saw it. A hollow in the snow, carefully pressed down, as if the bear had curled up there for a time. In the center lay something dark against the white, a strip of torn fabric. Emily knelt, her breath catching. It wasn't just any cloth. It was from a child's jacket. The piece was stiff with ice, but she could make out the faded yellow pattern, tiny dinosaurs. She knew that jacket. Everyone in town knew it. It belonged to Jake Turner, the 6-year-old who had gone missing 2 weeks ago. Mark's gaze swept the tree line. "It's leading us somewhere," he murmured. Emily's heart thudded. The bear hadn't been wandering aimlessly. It had been watching, approaching, leaving signs. And now, it had delivered proof of where it had been. The prints from the hollow led back toward the forest. Mark and Emily exchanged a glance, part fear, part resolve. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. There was a reason the bear kept coming back. And if the scrap of jacket was any indication, the reason was alive. Emily tightened her scarf against the cold. "We follow them," she said. Without another word, they stepped into the trees, trailing the path the bear had carved in the snow. Somewhere ahead something, or someone, was waiting. The trail was easy to follow at first, deep, deliberate paw prints cutting straight through the snow-laden forest. But as the trees grew thicker, the tracks wove between roots and brush, forcing Mark and Emily to slow down. The quiet was heavy, broken only by the crunch of their boots and the distant drip of melting icicles. Emily kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting the bear to appear behind them. Then, up ahead, movement. They froze. The bear stood in a small clearing, its thick fur dusted with frost. Its breath curled in the air like steam from a furnace. And between its massive paws, a shape. Small. Still. Emily's heart clenched. "Jake," she whispered. Mark reached for her arm, but the bear's head lifted, dark eyes locking onto them. It didn't growl, didn't move forward. It simply stood there, a living wall between them and the boy. The boy stirred. Not dead. Alive. But too weak to stand. Mark's mind raced. If they rushed in, the bear might see it as a threat. But if they waited too long, the boy might not survive the cold. Emily took a slow step forward. The bear's ears twitched, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it lowered its head toward Jake, almost as if it were shielding him. That's when Emily noticed something. The bear wasn't tense. It wasn't acting like a predator guarding prey. It was watching them, measuring them, as if deciding whether to hand the child over. The standoff stretched for what felt like minutes. Snowflakes drifted lazily between them. Then the bear did something neither of them expected. It stepped aside. A silent invitation. Emily's breath trembled. "Mark. I think it wants us to take him." Mark's voice was a whisper. "Then let's not waste the chance." They moved quickly, hearts pounding, knowing the wrong move could shatter the fragile trust that had formed in that frozen clearing. The first light of dawn spilled over the snow-covered trees, painting the forest in shades of gold and pink. Mark and Emily huddled over Jake, who was wrapped tightly in their coats, his small breaths shallow but steady. The bear lingered nearby, just beyond the edge of the clearing, its dark eyes never leaving them. Jake stirred and opened his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, voice raspy from the cold. Relief flooded Emily, and she gently brushed snow from his hair. The bear shifted slightly, a soft rumble vibrating through its chest. It was a sound that seemed both protective and proud. Mark realized then what had happened. The bear hadn't just saved Jake, it had guided them here, led them through the treacherous forest, and watched over the boy until help arrived. Emily knelt, offering a hand of gratitude toward the massive animal. "Thank you," she murmured, unsure if the bear understood words, yet hoping it felt the sincerity. The bear lifted its snout, sniffed the air, then turned slowly and disappeared back into the forest, leaving only its footprints in the snow and a sense of awe behind. Jake, now sitting up, stared after it. "The bear, it saved me," he said, his small face alight with wonder. Mark wrapped an arm around both of them. "Yes, buddy. And it showed us something important too. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." As they trudged back toward the warmth of home, the forest seemed quieter, gentler. Each snow-laden branch glistened like a reminder of the night's miracle. The bear had vanished, but its presence lingered in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed its quiet courage. Back at the house, Emily made hot cocoa while Jake recounted every detail of the night. Outside, the tracks in the snow slowly faded, but the story would live forever. A boy had been saved, a family had been reminded of the kindness of the wild, and the bond between humans and the creatures they share the world with had never felt so real. Somewhere in the forest, a bear padded silently through the snow, watching, waiting, and perhaps smiling in its own mysterious way.